Thank you for the invitation. And just to make things clear, I'm not Sander Dekker. I'm neither family. I cannot speak on behalf of the ministry, but I have some ideas which are my own. And that gives me the room to have a discussion, because I want your help. I have questions. And of course, I can pretend I know everything, but as you will find out, I have questions. I like the title in the sense that, yes, I'm going to talk about the Netherlands and about the national approach. But I think open access is global, and it's part of a bigger system. It's not just publishing. It's talking about the whole research process. That's what I want to talk about today. Why open access? I think you all know these items. But at the ministry, there is also a principle of the public money item. If research is funded by public money, then it should also be, the results should be available publicly. And we want to have better transfer of knowledge. And that goes for science, but also to have more connection with society at large and with business innovation. And I think it's also about improving quality of science. And that's where my first question is. I have an idea that we want to talk about quality of science, but nowadays the discussion is how to make an academic career and how to go through all these journals and score H indexes, impact factors, other metrics. But for me, the essential thing of science is to have new knowledge and to distribute this new knowledge. And I think we have to go back to that question. But I'm happy to have the discussion in a minute. Yes, we want a sustainable future for publishing. So it's not that the Netherlands is on a crusade against the publishers. On the contrary, we want to have a system where everybody has his role, but the role should be clear. And we want a transparent situation for this scholarly communication. And we want to have it effective and efficient. Efficient means in Dutch, we don't want to pay a lot of money, so we want to go Dutch. Then some familiar ground, how to accomplish this. And I think you know all these, because they are the purpose. But I think collaboration is a new one, at least on this slide. But there is a large resemblance of the purpose of OASPA, and I think how we could manage to go to open access to scholarly publications. So now I switch to the policy of NWO and later on of Dutch government. The Council started its open access policy a number of years, I think 5 years ago. And we started with the articles. It had the highest priority. We thought it would be most easy, but there is some new knowledge about this. Yes, we pay attention to books, but at the moment we stimulate platforms like Awapen. I think Eelco had already his talk today, or this morning? No? Still to come. And data, which we know is very complex because you have all the different types of data. Yes, we set up a financial support system for researchers having a council project. There is additional funds for publishing open access. And that refers to APCs or whatever costs that are necessary to go for open access. The fund is also eligible to do outreach. So if a researcher goes to a conference in his or her discipline, they can ask for a funding to organize a session on open access. I think the biggest challenge now is also awareness, and the largest obstacle is misunderstanding. We see this every time we talk to new people. We see this especially in the open data discussion, where a lot of people think open is the same as put it on the internet for everybody, whereas there are many complications and barriers for data, for example, with respect to privacy. And we changed the council grant rules. That's the current situation until this year. It says research results must be open, and you have to share the data. Just to give you a clue about publications, it says research results should be made accessible as soon as possible, and irrespective of other possibilities. But we want to update, and this as soon as possible will be changed into immediately. So on publication date, we want a version of the publication. And I think this policy resembles the policy of Gates Foundation, which have this policy going 100% in 2017, I think. And we think it's more important to have this access to either version of publication, but we want to have it immediately. And please keep in mind it's the researcher who decides which journal he or she wants to publish. But given this choice, he also has to deliver to meet this grant regulation. In this access fund I talked about, we no longer fund hybrid access. Just to be clear, it's not publishing in hybrid is still allowed, but it's not eligible anymore in the funding policy of NWO. And yes, we keep encouraging open access books. So in the fund, this will also be a possibility if you go for a book. And this outreach possibility stays in the budget. Just to mention briefly data, we run currently a pilot on open data, similar to EC in Horizon 2020. We have a number of research programs, and if you want to submit a proposal to the council, then you have to have a data section, just a small paragraph indicating what your data are about, how you plan to share. And if granted, then you have to deliver a data management plan within 6 months after the grant was given. Next, I move on to the Dutch policy. The why, the principle, etc., is about the same, which was on one of the first slides. I think encourage knowledge transfer is very important, not only to science, but also to society at large. And here goes my second question about stakeholders. One of the reasons to set up a policy from government was that we saw that the current stakeholders are not capable of switching to new models, to new systems, to open access. So that's a reason to develop a policy and to have this Dutch policy. I come on the lower right, you see it started in 2013 with an official letter to Parliament. We had an update earlier this year, and heading for the EU presidency next year, we wrote a so-called non-paper with the UK, stating what we want to do, and that's the Dutch policy. We want an open, transparent, sustainable system for scholarly communication. And one of the ways to do this is gold and immediate green. So all these colors are not the ultimate goal. They are a way to accomplish our goal, which is to be open access. This open access, as I said, is part of a bigger process which is called open science, at least at the European Commission. They had a consultation on Science 2.0, and it was renamed Open Science. And the Netherlands has decided to focus on open access of publications and optimal use of research data. Note that I don't use the term open data because that gives a lot of confusion. And I think data also includes software. So it's far more complicated, but we want that data which are collected with public money should be shared, should be accessible. So that's our focus. Just to give you a brief idea of how we did this. In the Netherlands, you always polder. I don't know the translation, but in the struggle against water, we had to cooperate and to have dry land. And we use this model also here. We set up a national policy that was end 2013 with the letter to Parliament. And then we joined with the national stakeholders. We had extensive discussions, we had meetings, we tried to make arrangements, and also we found out that we don't have any facts. We don't know how much we publish, how much it costs, so we have to set up a system, a monitoring system, to get some idea, no, not some, to get an actual idea of these facts and figures. And we also ask a council, advisory council, to give an advice on the social impact of open access, because we are focusing on the science, but what about open access and society, or open access and business? And we keep this feedback and just adapt our policy. And the Dutch presidency of the European Council was a way to say, we cannot do this alone. It's not a local or national item. You have to go global. The Netherlands in publications is about 2 or 3%. You know this better than me. But if we want to change, we have to cooperate. We have to find like-minded countries or foundations or other stakeholders to join forces. In the Netherlands, we set up a working group which meets every 2 weeks, and these contain major stakeholders, and we invite people and experts to these meetings. And we try to connect within Europe, that it's European Commission level. There are the European Research Area, a lot of committees. There is the Horizon 2020. And we have to do outreach. We have to tell what our policy is. So back to what these principles, the taxpayer principle was already mentioned, but we want an open market, we want transparency, we want to have a level playing field where all stakeholders know their roles, but also know what others are responsible for, so accountable for. And this goes back to my question, what about this quality of science? What's the ultimate goal? To be frank, if you go into this subject, you will see an enormous amount of problems, of challenges for publishers, for researchers, for funding bodies, for universities, but still, to be frank, I don't know what the focal problem is. I can list 20 or 30 causal problems, but for the discussion, what's the focal problem that we are trying to address here? And I hope we can have a discussion, so I rush through these notes and then have a discussion. What are our goals to have access to publications, to data? We want it to be sustainable, whatever that means. We want it to be easy, because researchers want it easy. Everybody wants it easy, even the publishers in processing submissions to papers. And we want reuse. It's not only for science. We have to find new user groups. And I think new user groups have to get acquainted how to read articles, how to have discussion, how to find your way in these 1.5 million articles a year. So, and for data, it's even a higher level, because you have to have some idea of analysis and software. So we want it to be easy, and we want reuse. To give an example, in the Netherlands we have about 25,000, 30,000 researchers at universities and research institutes. But we also have 250,000 teachers. They don't have access to their literature. They cannot get information about education systems. They cannot get information about their discipline. And the same goes for other groups too. I think that's one of the major problems we want to tackle. So, in the Dutch presidency, and now it becomes politics, there is a political line of action, and for the people in Europe, yes, we have a competitiveness council, where one of the items is research and innovation. There is the European research area, which has a number of priority, of which distribution of knowledge is one. And there is a special task force on open data. What we want is, yes, we go along this political line, but we also want to join forces with the stakeholders within Europe at global level. And we want action. I've been around in this subject for 5, 6 years. It could be a living to visit all these conferences, and I think in 5, 6 years, what is the progress? When are we reaching a tipping point? And that's what is our ambition, at least, during presidency, to have this action, to have action with stakeholders, with other countries, to have actual change. And in these stakeholders, you see the usual suspects, but we also want to include society and business innovation, because we want to have discussion with the new users. And we have 6 months for this during presidency. So, how do we go ahead? We have a lot of information gathering. The people of our working group participate in a number of committees, European projects. We try to meet with stakeholders every now and then. We have had an expert meeting on open access in Brussels with 60 experts. And there is the European Commission Open Science Agenda, which I think is a good framework where to proceed, but we also want to know how to proceed. And for this presidency, we have 3 main events. An informal meeting of research ministers, that's the official name. There will be a number of co-meetings, which we try to connect to. There is a presidency conference on open science beginning of April, and that's the big conference. There we can have 200, 250 people, not only ministers, not only director generals, but also the researchers and the new users, the publishers. And there is a formal competitiveness council at the end, and if you want to go ahead, you must have so-called council conclusions. So these are our stepping stones during these 6 months of presidency. Again, for discussion, how should we proceed? Yes, we could talk about leadership. Who's taking the lead? How can we develop national policies? How can we align policies? But from policies to open access, it's a long way. We could try to innovate the research processes. I think there are numerous ideas. And we want to have new research methods because of this digitization. Researchers want to use text and data mining or other tools just to do research in another way, also on the big data. And I think we could try to remove barriers from that prevent new open access models. I'm at the center here, so let's have a discussion. A major aspect is quality assessment. What is good research? Is it H-index? Is it some factor? Or should it be not only impact on science, but also impact on society or impact on innovation? And how to pinpoint that in preferably one metric, because policymakers want one figure. We have to train the awareness item, but also educate new data scientists. We have to educate and train the new users. Yes, we should monitor, because we collect basic data and also share expertise and exchange information, but in a way that we go ahead, not just talking to talk. We have to move on. And I think there will be some basic infrastructure needed, like platforms or combining high-performance computing, software, data, storage, etc., into one structure, one platform that benefits for researchers. So that was the Netherlands, but let's connect worlds. Thank you. And now discussion.
Thanks very much, Ron. I certainly think that the whole publishing world is looking at what the Netherlands are doing as an example, and not least in sort of some of the negotiations that happen.
Very interesting, Ron. You mentioned quality a number of times, and it strikes me that one of the central problems is that communication of science, on the one hand, and quality assessment is now rolled up in the same mechanism, journals, essentially, impact factor and so on. Although there are a few developments that may point to a new arrangement where the how do you call it, preprint servers like Archive and bioRxiv basically take care of the communication, and then there's an assessment phase later. Is NWO thinking about those matters, and do you see a role for the NWO policies to help separating, if you wish, these two streams, because both are legitimate?
Yes, thank you for this, bringing this up, because NWO is one thing. If you want to assess quality, it's in the veins of a research council to look at status and the idea of the proposal. But if you want to get away from this status discussion, then you have to find new ways to how to do the selection, even at the Research Council. But I think there is a kind of double loop. You have the selection at the Research Council, you have a selection at the publisher, which uses quite the same type of system, and it decides on careers. If you don't get into these journals, your status is too low to go for funding, unless you have a very bright idea, which always will come up. But this entanglement of publishing And quality assessment, it's a difficult one. Yes, I agree. And it's not only for council. I think you're tipping at one of the essential problems. I had a discussion with some researchers last week, and they said, just suppose we could start anew and say, what if we have a principle, first you publish, and of course it should be good enough to publish, and next you go for your qualification. So it could be in a journal, it could be in proceedings of a conference, it could be whatever in humanities, discussion, or whatever. But then you have the thing separated, and you can first publish and make it accessible. And then you go for the qualification and metrics and reuse, etc. Yeah. Good point.
As you made very clear in your opening remarks, open access is global, not local. There's obviously so much that the Netherlands can do, but clearly by working within Europe, then one can hope to progress the agenda. I think that was also at one point David Willett's ambition in the United Kingdom, that the new policies there would indicate a degree of leadership and that everybody would follow suit and pick up the baton from the UK, which they manifestly have not done in terms of the very gold-favouring policies. So what's happening now, and how much support is there in Europe for the Dutch model?
That we should ask the other countries, but we have close cooperation with the UK, also at political level. That's this UK Netherlands paper to the European Commission. As I said, we want to go Dutch, and we asked to the universities or the umbrella organization of universities who do the negotiations with the publishers. We want open access, and we want to remain access to all the international journals, but at no additional cost. And to have an update on that, you would have to ask the university umbrella organization, VSNU, about the latest state. But I think there was a breakthrough when we had this offsetting, when the Netherlands, the Dutch universities, had the offsetting deal with Springer. Because that was a very important signal that you can change. Apart from all the publishers like Science Open, PHI, Eli, they are developing new models, but a big publisher making this move was a very important signal. And what we see in Europe is some countries would support the gold, or in the end, or in 10 years, want to have gold open access. A number of countries I see, let's talk, it's my opinion, I see a number of countries being reluctant to switch to a new system because they know what they are paying now and they are unsure what they are going to pay. So this uncertainty prevents change. And with respect to gold, I think there will be gold APC, but there are also other ways of gold, institutional journals where APCs are very low or zero. So I think there will be a number of models in gold. There will be some models in green. I question if green is sustainable if there is no subscription model anymore, because green needs some base model. And I think a lot of countries agree that hybrid is temporary. It's not sustainable. It will either become gold or will fall back to subscriptions. That's my opinion.
No more questions. We'll continue the discussion actually at the end.
Jörg Botz from Max Planck Society. I think many people here in the room are looking very much forward to the actions during the EU presidency of the Netherlands, and you mentioned some lines of action, the informal meeting of the research ministers, the competitiveness council. May I ask you what kind of real action you expect from these meetings, or maybe better, what kind of actions do you hope for?
What I hope for is that we move along, because if you look at the European Council, at Europe, in 2012 there was already a so-called recommendation and communication on open access. I think it pointed out at the relevant topics, but how have we made progress on these topics? And for this we want, I think we want to prevent having a new list of to-dos. We want have-dones. And for this presidency conference is very important, because there we have the room to have discussions with stakeholders. And we would call upon stakeholders to come with ideas how to make progress. And it could be disciplinary groups, it could be publishers or combinations, but we want to see best practices, we want to move along. And what I said, we have to reduce this uncertainty. Also for publishers, if they know what a policy in Europe is, they can start developing new services. So, and that's where the leadership comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions just now? Okay, one more. Move it on to the panel discussion at the end. There'll be lots more.
Also, because it's in response of your question, of your statement about hybrid is not sustainable. It looks like the Dutch University big deal discussions is more about hybrid than
yes.
gold. So that then seems a short-term solution and not a sustainable way to do big deal discussions.
Yeah, I think, but that's my opinion, that it's a very important step to show that you can change to other systems. But in the end, if a journal has more than 50% open access articles, I think it will flip to a gold system. And if it doesn't and it goes down, then it will be a subscription again. So that's what I mean with it's an in-between. Yes, but
okay, thank you very much.
Still the offsetting agreement was a very important signal that we can change.
Okay, that's great. Well, so if you come back at the end of the three talks, and I think we'll open up